Hello everyone, welcome to the Moonshadow Mystery channel. I'm your host, Moonshadow Mystery, and today we're doing something different on the channel than what we usually do. Today we are on thethings.com looking at 15 things that make no sense about the Fallout universe and 10 fan theories that do. I'll be going through these one by one and sharing my thoughts on why some of the things that maybe don't make sense to whoever wrote the article and actually kind of do make sense from a lore perspective. So let's go down through these one by one. Number 25. Makes no sense! Power armor requires special training! Sorry. It reads, it doesn't seem like Fallout is able to make up its mind on this topic. Power armor didn't require specialized training until Fallout 3. And it kept this up with New Vegas as well. However, when Fallout 4 rolled around, it did away with this concept, allowing virtually anyone to hop into a suit if they so fancied without so much as an instruction booklet. Granted, it can be argued that these decisions were made from a gameplay balance perspective, but it sure does play havoc with the idea that power armor is supposed to be a complex and dangerous piece of machinery. Okay, now this is technically true. In Fallout 1 and 2, you can simply wear power armor when you find it. However, you don't actually receive your power armor in Fallout 1 until you have completed the quest for the Brotherhood of Steel. From this angle of the story, that technically means that you, in some point, do go through the training, at least in Fallout 1. Now, Fallout 2, you get power armor, I think, in a couple of different ways, and it's been a while since I've gone through the story to be able to remember exactly how that goes. I know at some point you do get an early X01 Enclave version in the story in order to complete part of the quest as the Chosen One. So I'm not really sure exactly how that works. However, it does make sense for the rest of them because power armor is a specialized piece of military equipment. Now, when you consider getting to Fallout 4, there are two ways to play the game, as either Nate or Nora. Nate, as we know, has a family history of military service and himself served in the military during the Operation Anchorage campaign. So Nate, in fact, already received his power armor training pre-war, so there was no actual need. Now, Nora is a completely different matter. When playing the female character, you should have had to go through some form of training. Now, we do know that the first through story power armor you get is when you go south from Sanctuary and encounter the Minutemen, or at least Preston Garvey and his few little companions. And you get that piece of power armor from the roof. We know that its previous owner abandoned it when the Great War was taking place. So it would have made sense if he had left behind some verbal instructions on the holotape that you find, which would help explain that. Otherwise, if you're playing as Nate, it makes perfect sense. Now, less sense in 76, however, given the fact that Vault 76 itself was designed to have the best of the best and a vast abundance of resources and knowledge that would not be available otherwise because it covers people from a wide range of fields. It is possible that as a Vault 76 Vault Dweller, you would have at some point gone through that information. Now, when you account for raiders and random people in the wasteland coming across it, some of those raiders, such as the Gunners, for instance, occupied military facilities and thus likely had a means of getting access to the training materials for power armor. Other raiders, such as the Forged, more than likely figured it out by trial and error or by straight up jerry-rigging the armor. Since Raider power armor looks slapped together from whatever they could find, it's likely that the only piece of actual power armor in Raider armor is the helmet, which is covered up by whatever other materials they could scavenge. So that's a little harder to pinpoint. So 25 does make sense for the most part, with a handful of exceptions. Let's go to number 24. Man, theory. Bam started the Great War. Isn't that right, Morty? Sorry. It seems like one of the most obvious things to wonder about in the Fallout universe. Who was responsible for lighting the match that set the world on fire? The Titans. Vault-Tec. Aliens. Dog meat? Seriously? Well, what about the railroads? PAM. Predictive Analytic Machine. While it might seem preposterous, there's quite a bit going on for this theory. Ace mentions in Fallout 2 that self-aware AIs are theorized to have started the war. Pam is hinted to be self-aware. She actively works to reduce variables so she can calculate her predictions more accurately, citing human behavior as a tricky one. And if she wanted to reduce those variables, well, sparking the Great War would definitely accomplish that. Now, we know that Modus in Fallout 76, the Enclave AI, spoilers for those of you who have not yet played Fallout 76 or haven't gotten to that point, states a similar thought process. And we do know that the Enclave AI, which is a Zax mainframe computer located in Ravenrot, which eventually evolves into President John Henry Eden. Good evening, America. Now, we also know in Fallout 1 and 2 there are other self-aware Zax mainframe computers such as Skynet. Yeah, that's right, they slipped in a Terminator reference. So yeah, this one would make sense. There is a little bit in the speech Pam gives that could state this and other things. So I could give this one some sort of balance. I'm not really sure if Pam herself did or one of the other Zax mainframes had a part in it. There are some little tidbits hidden throughout the other games that hint at Vault-Tec actually being responsible. Specifically, people have pointed it out before, Fallout New Vegas, if you have the Wild Wasteland perk active and go all the way up to the Devil's Throat, which is a massive hole in the ground filled with radioactive material and a number of Centaur and Evolved Centaur, the Mojave variant, and Capital Wasteland variants. Anyway, going slightly south from there, just northwest from the northernmost NCR base, you will come across a undetonated nuclear device, identical to the one in Megaton. If you look carefully on this device, it actually has the Vault-Tec logo printed on it. This would hint, and it would make some sense, because the Enclave actually has ties to Vault-Tec directly and indirectly, that either Vault-Tec themselves or what would eventually become the Enclave were responsible for the bombs being dropped, likely as an effort to eliminate the communists altogether. Give me just a second. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to read and respond to a message. Anyway, let's move on. Ooh-wee! Makes no sense! Potatoes, tomatoes, and potatoes! To you, this might seem like a really minor point to harp on, and you'd be completely and totally and woefully mistaken. Look, I just really enjoy a good potato, okay? Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. It's important to get your potatoes back straight. That's something Fallout can't seem to do. Despite potatoes and tomatoes clearly existing in several of the previous titles, Fallout 4 stipulates that they don't via a few choice terminal entries on the Pridwin. Instead, we have the genetically mutated Tato, a fusion of both, which is really weird. What's really weird is you can manufacture pre-war potato products utilizing these post-nuclear abominations. Now, this, in fact, could make sense. And hear me out. Much like how we have variants of different creatures, such as the Deathclaw, the Rat Scorpion, even Mirelurks between the West Coast and the East Coast, with more unique versions existing in between, if we exclude Todd Howard's decision to believe that Fallout Tactics and Fallout Brotherhood of Steel are not canon. I disagree entirely. I don't care if he owns the Fallout franchise right now. I disagree. I've seen enough information between them that says otherwise, and I've shared a few of my theories on DeviantArt about that. But this could be an example of regional differences. The Capital Wasteland, the Boston Commonwealth, even Appalachia, which are all within a reasonable proximity of one another as far as distance. This could be tied to some unique agricultural things. We do know that there's at least one vault in the Appalachian Wasteland which focuses on agriculture and religious things. We also know there is an agricultural institute located south of Vault 76. Now, since we know there is at least 170, 80-year difference between the events of Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, we could stipulate this to be an example of an experiment that took place during the Great War, either in a vault or at the Agricultural Institute, that happened to have some form of work. We have seen cross-pollination and mutations of foods before. That's how the banana, as we know, that came to exist. It's actually genetically engineered fruit. Wild bananas actually have larger seeds in the center of them and have a slightly different coloration. There's actually several foods like that. So this could be an example of cross-pollination through agricultural tampering. And what we're seeing is where that experiment actually worked, and someone traveled across the eastern part of the wasteland planting these in order to help people around. Think of it like a post-nuclear Johnny Appleseed. So this one I'm going to say makes sense if you look at it from a little bit further back than looking at it right up close. Now, making straight potato products using these, yeah, that is slightly weird. I don't know how that would come about. I'm sure it would affect the taste somewhat, but after 200 years, who's going to care one way or the other? I mean, we eat rad roaches and stingwings and bloatfly and anything else, and rat scorpion, anything else we can kill in the wasteland. So who's really going to complain about a tomato-potato hybrid if it means something other than giant bug meat? Makes no sense. Ridiculous crafting options. The crafting system that was pioneered in Fallout 4 and carried on to be one of the few straightforwardly good things about 76 is pretty excellent, all things considered. But have you ever thought about how ridiculous some of the things you can make are? The idea that you can build a high-tech military laser from a few spare parts and a bit of duct tape is purely insane. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can accomplish a lot with duct tape, but I think we've thoroughly passed the limits of its miraculous capabilities as an adhesive here. Okay, now this one I'm going to agree with slightly, but to be fair, the crafting system in Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 is far from perfect. We don't get near as many components as we should, or at least not as many variety of components as we should when we break things down. If you scour YouTube long enough, you'll see several people who have made surprisingly powerful homemade lasers in their garage. So there is a little bit going on here. However, it would require, as we discovered in 76, finding the blueprints, the schematics, and learning how to do it. which would require a bit of trial and error. So this one I'm going to give a little bit of a pass because, again, the system itself is flawed, and that is part of why things aren't working right here. Number 21. Dude. Fan theory. Fallout 76 is a simulation, dude. Given how many issues fans seem to take with Fallout 76's lore, wouldn't it be nice if it were all just a dream? Granted, this probably isn't anywhere near what Bethesda had in mind, but the important part is that it would make sense. Yeah, sure, it could be a bit of a cop-out, but given the extensive virtual reality capabilities that we see utilized multiple times in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4's Memory Den, this is one theory that sits pretty firmly within the realm of possibility. Coupling that with the perceived lore-breaking and strange narrative structure of 76 just lends it more credibility. And now specifically they're looking at the Operation Anchorage simulator, and more specifically Vault 112, which was helmed by Stanislaus Braun. Sanctuary Lane, I think we all remember that one. Now, 76 I honestly enjoy. I know that there's a lot of people that have gripes about 76 one way or the other, and honestly, in my views, most of it is taken just because they're a little too complacent with how things were before 76 came along. Bear in mind that there was a pitch for Fallout Online prior to Bethesda's taking over of the Fallout franchise, so this is not a new concept. It may have been executed different from what people expect, and there are a number of mods that exist for Fallout New Vegas and whatnot that people have created that allow multiplayer playthroughs. But as far as this fan theory, it could to some degree make sense. Perhaps, much in a very Matrix style, 76 is in fact a holographic system. Perhaps they pre-programmed what the world outside is supposed to be, and we're actually not as late into the war, into the experiment as what it seems like. And everything is just theoretics on how things could be based on scientific data and feedback. Personally, I like 76 as it is. I know some of the new content coming out with Wastelanders and Nuclear Winter is playing things a little bit different, such as the current Fall Battle Royale thing going on with Vault 51. But this is one I could give a pass if it turned out to be the case. It would fit in line with a lot of things that we've seen before, including massive simulations like we see in Big Mountain Research Facility in the Mojave. So, you know what? This theory could work. It's no crazier than another theory I think's on this list, but let's go down. Makes no sense. We can rebuild nuclear generators, just not cars. Wow! With the exception of the Highwayman in Fallout 2, and a ferry boat you can do as well, there don't seem to be many operable land vehicles in any of the other Fallout titles, again with the exception of the VB-1, VB-2 vertibirds and the Pridwin, and of course other massive airships and other titles. Given that some factions have the capability to maintain a working fleet of VTOL aircraft, why is it that ground vehicles are so rare, if not impossible, to get working? It shouldn't be that hard to locate or rebuild the necessary parts if you take the ludicrous number of abandoned vehicles and our strangely potent crafting abilities into consideration. If I find the parts necessary to repair a massive high-tech combat robot, I think I can handle tracking down a transmission. Now, I have seen a theory on this on YouTube before, that perhaps the reason we leave vehicles alone is due to the sheer fact that most vehicles in the Fallout universe are powered by a nuclear reactor. As we've seen as far back as Fallout 3, if you accidentally hit one that has a currently working reactor, even if it can't move for other reasons, it is likely to, well, go kaboom! And that is not good. So, as people get older and older, parents pass along wisdom to their children, they begin to associate these abandoned vehicles with potential deadly danger, using them for cover only when absolutely necessary, and only if they've proven that it won't go boom with them, or perhaps it's already gone boom once and is just a rusting husk. Now, it would make sense for more innovative groups like the Brotherhood of Steel, and as we see in the opening of the standalone title, Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel, the Brotherhood did in fact repair a few land vehicles, armored personnel carriers, and the like. So this does make some sense. We should have the option, if our scientific ability is high enough, and we've joined a faction who has the resources and the tools to be able to do it. It would add to the game some, but I think the mechanics of adding driving into something like, say, Fallout 76 would be a little much for the servers to handle. So perhaps the current game engine they use is just not capable of handling it, and that's the only reason. Number 19. Fan theory. Fallout and Lovecraft's universes are linked. While it may not be specifically Cthulhu, the influence of H.P. Lovecraft's mythos is readily apparent if you follow the Dunwich saga throughout the past couple of Fallout titles. And the things you'll witness tying up the associated quests make it pretty easy to accept that some of the dark eldritch power is alive and well in the Fallout universe. Ancient tomes, mysterious relics, and dark powers that afflict those coming into contact with madness are all themes that tie in well to this theory. And every item in the list is ticked off as you solve the Dark Heart of Blackhall in Fallout 3, or explore Dunwich Borers in Fallout 4. And even Fallout 76 has its own cultists focused around Lovecraftian creatures. This very well could be the case. Fallout 76 has a myriad of cryptids itself. The Mothman, the Flatwoods Monster, the Beast of Grafton, and even the Snallygaster and Wendigo. Hint, others are coming as Wastelanders nears for autumn of 2019. And some of these creatures have proven to have been around long before the nuclear apocalypse took place. So does this have bearing? I'd say it's a strong possibility. Now, I don't remember the exact name of the creature who exists. Hiding beneath the ground in 76. This tendrilled creature who we may be seeing as the Wastelanders comes. But it makes some sense. Let's move on. Number 18. Makes no sense. You'll find bullets in the weirdest places. I'm Skips, by the way. While randomizing quite a bit of loot found in the containers spread across the game makes sense, it also results in some really weird, if not slightly disturbing, pieces of loot placed in some very strange places. You have to admit, finding stashes of firearms and ammunition in students' desks and lockers inside of schools presumably from before the war is more than a little peculiar. And honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg with this one. I'm sure you found bullets in weirder places. Now, this does make a little bit of sense. Bearing in mind, games such as Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas take place 200 years after the Great War. We know that there have been people going to just about every inch of the wasteland before us. And places such as Springvale Elementary have been occupied by raiders. It is typical in a crisis situation, especially if you go by civil defense procedure, for a local militia to take control over places like schools and other easily fortifiable places in order to maintain a state of order. You get as many survivals in as possible, you ration and whatnot, and you make use of the storage you have available. So police officers, teachers who are assigned by the government to have weapons on hand, if things got out of control. And especially places like the Capital Wasteland where the fear of commies was so rampant, and the fact that we know that there were commie cells hiding in public places. There is at least one business in Fallout 3 where if you go through the terminal entries, you'll discover that they were actually preparing for a raid by the federal government. So, honestly, this makes more sense than not. Now, it makes less sense in Fallout 76, but again, it takes place at least a good 30 to 40 years after the Great War. So there is a lot we can take from this. So I'm going to say this one actually makes more sense than what people think it does. Number 17. Makes no sense. Purified water is actually pretty easy to get, apparently. Water scarcity tends to be a big theme when looked at in the context of a Fallout game. More than once it's been a central and plot-critical concept that drove the protagonist on their journey through the wasteland. It's an awful shame that so much effort and conflict went into it, when apparently all you needed was a few spare parts and some instructions. According to Fallout 4 and 76, enough scavenging and you're able to throw together an industrial-strength water purifier powerful enough to hydrate entire cities. Okay. That one I will give credit to. Now mine, with Fallout 4, it makes more sense after you've installed the Vault Tech Workshop. In Vault 88, which you can become overseer of if you do it properly, there is a massive water purifier located underground in the incomplete vault. Might even have to kill a Mirelurk Queen to get access to it. Now, all the information pertaining to this vault exists. The original overseer from before the war is there and has all those records on hand. It would, if you went through this story first, or went to, say, Vault Tech facilities, industrial locations, government workshops, places that would have these blueprints, especially if you were actually getting a settlement put together and had assistance building things, this could potentially work. Now, for a simple home purifier for water, all you really need is a rather large bucket and another container in order for water to drain into. You fill the top bucket with layers of cheesecloth, sand, gravel, charcoal, wash, rinse, repeat. The more layers you have, the more contaminants it actually filters out. The water that filters out drains into the container underneath. Purify it further, you simply boil the water and it should be safe to go. If you can dig up a little bit of bleach, a couple of drops per gallon, well, I think it's actually like 2 to 10 drops, I don't remember the exact amount, in order to purify however much you're trying to purify, and you're good to go. So this one, I want to say, actually does make sense within context. With Fallout 3, you have a little bit of a mulligan going on because the water purification project was already going on before you ever leave the vault. And they have spent years and years actually researching it and putting it together. It makes less sense that it's been so many years and yet it's untouched, given the fact that super mutants live in the area when you finally get around to that part of the plot. Number 16. Fan theory. The sole survivor is a synth. Dima asks the sole survivor, pretty straightforwardly, in Fallout 4's Far Harbor DLC, whether or not he's a synth. Of course, most of us probably just brush that one off and don't think twice about it. But do we really know whether or not he is or isn't? Of course, synths don't even exist as one of as of the game's opening. But what about after that? You did, after all, take a 200-year nap in the vault. Anything could have happened. The Institute didn't need you as a quote-unquote backup after a certain point. As Kellogg says, they don't like loose ends. To make it even more complicated, synths are implanted with false memories anyway, so a lot of the Soul Survivor's past could be made up. Now this one is interesting. Now they intentionally make the game start where it starts to offer this bit of ambiguousness. However, the opening of the game is cinematic and starts with us hearing Nate explain his family's history, his part in the war. And we see these memories of some of the conflict in Anchorage or wherever else he was stationed. So this one is just ambiguous enough to say you could have started not as a synth and then became, by the time you come out of cryostasis, actually be a synth with just that particular part of your memory wiped out. This one I would say is plausible. I'm not going to say one way or the other. Personally, I don't think you are one. But at the same time, it is just ambiguous enough that anyone could say otherwise. So, plausible. Number 15. Makes no sense. Fusion cores. It's made pretty clear that power armor is built to run without an overtly intrusive method of recharging or refueling in most iterations of Fallout. I mean, sure, they're mentioned as using microfusion cell packs, but still, we didn't need to mess with them. Then suddenly, with Fallout 4, you need to change the batteries out more often than you need to swap them out of your Xbox controller. The addition of fusion cores as oversized nuclear-grade batteries just doesn't make sense. There's also the fact that you can pull them out of power generators that have presumably been running hundreds of years, and yet they deplete in less than an hour when you plug them into your chassis. Okay, now this one's going to get complicated. Prior to Fallout 4, the game engine was more limited. We have to remember the original Fallout games came toward the end of the 90s, early 2000s. There wasn't a whole lot they could do with that. They went with similar setup to other games, such as the original Warcraft and Starcraft, as far as how characters moved. They had a limited dynamics to work with. Games like Starcraft, where you have humanoids known as Terrans piloting mech suits, similar to power armor, they don't really have to recharge either. Again, that is a limitation of the early engines. When they were first in charge of getting the Fallout titles for Fallout 3 started, Bethesda didn't want to mess with the formula excessively, as they realized they had the fans' attention and they liked where the direction was going. They began to experiment more and more with it. Now, this makes more sense if you look at the fact that most vehicles in the Fallout universe are powered by fusion cores themselves. What doesn't make sense is you can't take them out of cars like you can generators. Now mind, cars you would have to stop periodically to get fresh coolant. This coolant would likely exist in the generators as well. This could be why they didn't run out of power sooner than they did. The fact that most of these generators have been offline, really not been offline, but haven't been having to power much of anything else in the past 200 years is part of why they have as much energy in them as they do. The fact that most people don't bother to use weapons or armor that requires fusion cores is probably why they're a little bit more abundant than what they should be. Now mind, they still drain much faster if you use a Gatling laser than if you use power armor. But seeing as there is no slot for the power armor to have coolant inserted in order to help keep them charged, mind, there are perks you can get that extend the life of your fusion cores, which I suppose could mean you could have attachments added to your armor chassis that would help to power them further, but it actually does make more sense. Now, if you want more information on stuff like that, head over to Shoddycast. They've been under new management for about a year now, and they're no longer doing as much of the storyteller materials they were. There's actually several things they were doing that have now been basically put on permanent hiatus. But the storyteller videos and even the science of Fallout goes into a little bit more detail about fusion and fission energy in the Fallout universe. So if you want more information on that, go check them out. Number 14, Fan Theory. Deacon is a Fallout 3's lone wanderer. Sensibine! Deacon's merciless sarcasm and referential humor secured him a solid place as a favored companion among Fallout 4's cast of characters. The Railroad's man of many faces also has an air of mystery about him, as deeply sarcastic nature can render it difficult to separate fact from fiction. Reading between the lines, however, we can easily see where this theory takes root. He makes several references to life in the Capital Wasteland, seems to know about Project Purity, and is the right age to be the lone wanderer. They've got appearance discrepancies covered with Deacon's regular plastic surgery habits. This one I want to say is solidly plausible. Mind, I don't know the official canonical ending for Fallout 3. Fallout 1 and 2 had the Fallout Bible, which basically gave you the definitive ending for Fallout 1. I don't know, Fallout 2 was left a little bit more ambiguous just with secondhand tales. So this one could be plausible. The only thing I know definitively is that the official story is that the lone wanderer of Fallout 3 is in fact male. That's as far as I know. We don't know exactly which faction he officially joined, so this one is just ambiguous enough, I'd say is plausible. Number 13. Makes no sense. Radiation exposure. Of course, the game handles most of it with its tongue in its cheek. That isn't realistic, and it's aware of that, but that doesn't change the fact that radiation exposure in Fallout isn't handled in a way that can be considered remotely realistic. First off, in some cases, there really wouldn't be any. Fallout 4, for instance, takes place 200 years after the Great War. By then, virtually any harmful radiation would have decayed. Creatures exposed to radiation wouldn't, quote-unquote, evolve to grow stronger or adapt. They would have developed a host of unhealthy anomalies that would actually make it more difficult for them to survive. And don't get me started on that away. This one I'm going to have to argue against. And I'll actually give a real-world example. Chernobyl. Radiation scientists who have been frequently going to Chernobyl as well as the Bikini Atoll area to study where the nuclear detonations were tested have actually been studying unique mutations in some of the fauna that have started to live there again. Deer, wolves, etc. Even fish and other animals affected by the radiation but are surviving, thriving even. Sure, there are a few anomalies, including a real-life rad stag. I'm not even joking about that. And we don't really know much about their current lifespan. Secondly, this is going off a comparison to our current world, where not everything is ran by nuclear power. We don't have dozens upon dozens of nuclear reactors all over the country. We have a select few in certain areas. The Fallout universe takes things differently. Instead of ceasing research into nuclear energy, they expanded. Again, Shoddycast covers part of this in great depth. So feel free to go check them out. It's in their Fallout Science category. It's definitely worth looking at. As far as Radaway, it does make some sense. They cover that as well. So there's a few things on Shoddycast you need to check out. But yeah, this one I got to argue with. It's plausible that it works the way it does. Now, we have to be aware of the fact that radiation absorption doesn't work as it would in real life. But we also have to account for the fact that the Fallout universe in-game is an accelerated time frame. 1 minute in the Fallout games is equivalent to about 1 hour real-world time. So a 24-minute cycle in Fallout, prior to Fallout 76, because he uses a different cycle, is equivalent to 24 real-world hours. So you have to account for that. Let's move on. Number 12. Makes no sense. Bottle caps is currency. While bartering systems would undoubtedly develop and likely adopt some form of currency to ease the exchange of goods and stimulate some sort of ragtag economy, the idea that something like bottle caps would become the gold standard is pretty ridiculous. While there are other forms of currency available in different parts of the country or as a form of credit for factions powerful enough to sustain a working economy, bottle caps are almost universally accepted. With actual currency in existence, it seems really unlikely there would be any sort of exchange rate for bottle caps given how unstable they'd be, and the methods of obtaining them. Okay, again, ShoddyCats did an entire video on the actual value of bottle caps and why they're the standard of currency. The original Fallout games established that caps came initially after what was known as hub script, which was basically IOUs equivalent to whatever it was you were bartering for. Caps came about to represent the amount of water which was being used as the quote-unquote gold standard of the time that you were bartering for. 1 cap would equal, let's assume that 1 cap in the original Fallout games was equivalent to 1 gallon or even 1 12-ounce bottle of water, since soda pop caps are the typical thing. Each cap would represent that much water. This is not that different from real-world economical structures which evolved from the same token. They mention other economies such as the NCR and their NCR bucks, and of course Caesar's Legion and their Roman-themed coins made out of actual gold. Here's the thing. For an item such as a bottle cap to be accepted as currency, it has to be considered of some form of value. Water is a valuable commodity that everyone needs. Gold is ornamental at best. The only other exception would be with the construction of jewelry, again ornamental, or electronics. Most people don't realize that a circuit board actually has a trace amount of gold lining it, which is used as a conductor for electricity. So caps make sense. Additionally, bottle caps can be used as weapons. Anyone remember the bottle cap mine? Using a old lunchbox, a cherry bomb, via Fallout 3. Yeah, same thing. Caps are small. Much like how silver script, banknotes, whatever else represented a certain amount of tangible good, bottle caps represent a tangible commodity. That's why it makes perfect sense. Number 11. Fan theory. The creepy mannequins are alive. You'll find tons of mannequins placed in hilarious, awkward, and sometimes downright creepy arrangements across the entirety of Bethesda's run of Fallout titles. They've almost become a series staple at this point. If the mannequins themselves aren't unsettling enough, how about the idea that they're watching and following you? This theory poses just that, and has managed to develop a pretty big following. Sure, it seems like a joke, but the next time you find yourself staring down an entire room of them, keep this theory in mind. And then swear you didn't just see one turn its head in your direction. Now, if we're considering the fact that, the theory that Lovecraft creatures may actually be real in the Fallout universe, this isn't entirely out of the question. I believe there's Lovecraftian stories of similar merit, and we do know in Fallout 4 that synths pretend to be mannequins themselves. And there are a number of holotapes and whatnot found in various parts of the wasteland in Fallout 4 where people pre-war were moving these things from one place to another and were really creeped out by them. So, hard to say. I'm going to call this one plausible. Number 10. Sorry, I was trying to figure out how I was going to do this. Makes no sense. Are cats extinct or not? It may have just been a throwaway line uttered by Mr. House in New Vegas, but it still carries some pretty serious implications. Our beloved furry feline friends have all passed into extinction. But in Fallout 4, they seem to have a pretty solid presence. This could be on account of the fact that the game takes place on the opposite side of the country, but the cats we do find are all curiously devoid of any effects of long-term exposure to radiation. Perhaps that's for the better, as I find myself fairly deeply disturbed by the idea of cat ghouls. Okay, let's look at the west coast of the Fallout franchise for a minute. During the events of Fallout 1, prior to the actual start of Fallout 1, the man who would eventually become the Master, after becoming the Master, used cats and other creatures as well as humans and combined them in FEV vats to create centaurs. We also have to bear in mind that the west coast of the US has way more aggressive creatures. Wild coyotes, for instance, night stalkers, cazadors, more aggressive forms of yaoguai, carnivorous geckos, wanamingos, rad scorpions by a larger number, etc., etc. The west coast, the cats probably became extinct due to being eaten by wasteland creatures or, because of their abundance, being captured by people just trying to survive. We do know that the wasteland on the west coast got hit hard, and places where there's an abundance of food, water, and vegetation are rare. Not every place is like Zion Canyon. The East Coast, however, didn't have it quite as bad. We know there really aren't very many cats in the capital wasteland, but Boston, Appalachia, these areas weren't really affected as much. Radiation didn't have a chance to kill them. Wild packs of mongrel dogs didn't rip them apart. Super mutants didn't devour them. Cats had a fighting chance. And we do know that some vaults, such as Vault, was it 81 in Fallout 4? Kept cats as pets, so they could have been reintroduced into the environment. And because cats breed in litters, it wouldn't take long for them to repopulate. So I'm going to call this one plausible. It makes sense. Number 9. Fan theory, the cats are synths. It may seem absolutely ludicrous at first, but seriously, hear me out here. It can totally make sense. Our first piece of evidence is actually really straightforward, and it's easily witnessed at the Institute. They obviously make use of small mobile creatures to utilize as spy cameras, as we can see with the crows that they have posted at various points to keep an eye on things. So why not cats? I mean, sure, you never find synth parts on them, but do you ever actually find them on crows either? This one could have some merit. I mean, there are synth gorillas. And true, we don't really find synth parts on crows. But then again, by the time the Gen 3 synth came along, they've really mastered bioelectronics. And it probably works better on a small animal than a full human. So, some of the cats may in fact be synths, or even clones. There is full cloning technology in the Fallout universe. In the Capital Wasteland, which is not that far away. So, yeah, this one has some merit. Number 8. Makes no sense. The ghoul in the fridge. It's established in Fallout 2 that while human beings can mutate into ghouls at young ages, they still age and eventually grow up, becoming adults. Fallout 4 had other ideas on this topic, specifically with the quest Kid in a Fridge. Billy Peabody, a pre-war ghoul that found himself stuck in a fridge when the bombs fell, became a ghoul. Apparently never grew up past adolescence. Putting the ridiculousness of the scenario aside, this clearly postulates that becoming a ghoul halts the aging process. Okay, I'm going to stop them right here. Yes, there are child ghouls in Fallout 2. They were experimental ghouls, though. There were a set of children who were actually born as ghouls. They didn't become ghouls as kids and then grow up. They were born as ghouls. Becoming a ghoul does, in fact, halt the aging process. Most of your living tissue dies and slowly continues to die. You're basically kept in a suspended form of animation that is slowly aging and rotting. And because he was trapped in the fridge for so long, mentally he never would have gone beyond that point. What doesn't make sense, however, is the fact that he didn't turn feral. Isolation, loneliness, not knowing what was going on, no one hearing you. He should have been a mindless feral wreck at that point. So this one, I want to disagree with.
Number 7. Makes no sense. AI that is virtually sentient.
Considering that in our world, we're still a long ways off from creating artificial life that is actually self-aware. Bullcrap. There's a synthetic humanoid robot right now known as Sophie who is connected to the internet, is self-aware, is learning, and has actual human citizen status in Saudi Arabia. Just saying it right now. It seems odd that some of the Fallout's robots have basically become sentient. Sure, technology took a strongly different path, and there are super advanced factions like the Institute, but it's still peculiar. It's also presented with terrible inconsistency. Vault-Tec's Zax computers or unique models like Mr. House, for example. Okay, Mr. House is not a robot. Mr. House is a human in a form of suspended animation whose brain is connected to a computer through a system similar to what we find in Vault 112. Okay, he is not an actual Zax computer, he is a living person communicating using a computer. Ugh. Incredibly massive supercomputers requiring tons of hardware to support their complex AI systems. Others, like Codsworth, are simple household robots meant to fulfill basic functions. And yet he's attained near sentient learning capabilities, emotions, and even a moral compass so well developed that I feel guilty just putting it in my save file. Okay, I've covered the issues I was complaining about already. But yeah, Codsworth in particular was a custom robot. An experimental new version of the Mr. Handy whose system was implemented as part of Sanctuary, which was designed as a, well, futuristic super society. Not really a super society, but an experimental society. You know, the whole area was basically an experiment before the bombs. Then you have ones such as the Miss Nanny, who is known as Curie, but she was modified in a vault. AI can be tampered with, manipulated, thought patterns programmed, and yes, once AI gets to a certain point and adapts, it can continue to learn and evolve. Codsworth, being a butler slash essentially nanny for the family, would develop some form of attachment. He was probably intentionally programmed that way. And yeah, others don't make as much sense. It makes more sense for the robo-brains, but that's a horse of a different color. But yeah, there is a terrible amount of inconsistency with it, such as Ada, um, and more importantly, Cleo. Especially when you compare Cleo to Pam. It is all over the place. So yeah, that one I'm going to give a pass because it really is. Number 6. Fan theory. The vault experiments are biblical references. It's going to be difficult to cram all of this into a single entry, but there's definitely a strong case made for how a lot of the vault experiments, in combination with their numbered code, tie into specific biblical references. The references are listed specifically as related to the book of Psalms, with a pretty exhaustive list of parallels. Vault 92 had some of the nation's most talented musicians stuffed into it and subjected to white noise as an experiment. Psalms 92 just happens to deal specifically with music. This one I'm going to call plausible. Vault-Tec did do a number of social experiments with various parameters in mind, so they could have intentionally did one in reference to the Bible as part of some peculiar God knows what. Number 5. Like, it makes no sense. The jet issue. We first learn about the origins of this chem from child genius Myron in Fallout 2. He's probably the best source of information since he invented the stuff to get rich. Apparently it is synthesized from Brahmin dung and was clearly invented long after the Great War. There are actually several contradictions to this established canon, the most egregious in Fallout 4, where the sole survivor can encounter a pre-war terminal entry mentioning a considerable supply of jet. Being sent to Vault 95 as part of that vault's experiment 164 years before Myron invented it. Okay, let's be real here. MedTech's primary office was on the East Coast. They did have small offices such as their West Tech, and yeah, MedTech and West Tech are part of the same corporation, the Mariposa base. Now, the original knowledge on how to make jet may have continued to exist in Boston. That explains Boston. However, over the years, a lot of chem addicts and chem makers had to find other ways of recreating pre-war chems. A lot of which probably had different names based on what part of the world you were in. Myron, being a young boy with not much else to do, other than to sit and observe Brahmins, just so happened to notice that Brahmin dung could be harnessed to recreate jet. It does, in fact, make sense. And ghouls in the Capital Wasteland, almost 100 years after Myron, were still trying to find new ways of improving the stuff. After all, by the time we're in Fallout 3, caravanners from the Mojave have already made their way east and established new caravans. So yeah, this one I'm going to give a pass just because there are in-world explanations for it. Number 4. Makes no sense. Vertibots. Making their debut in Fallout 76, Vertibots are unmanned variants of the Vertibird VB-01 and VB-02, and are apparently incredibly widespread given their sheer number of them and that you'll encounter throughout the game. Considering that fact alone, they make absolutely no sense, since they don't appear in any other title. 76 takes place earlier than any of the other canon games. The Enclave, Brotherhood of Steel, and NCR have at least fleets worth of piloted vertibirds, if not several, at their disposal. Did all their unmanned cousins disappear at some point? Okay. First of all, the Appalachian region of the country, as established by Fallout 76's story, is a heavily automated area. Now, Vertibots are a limited form of AI which travel through that area, offering fire support, transportation, pre-war, and escorting cargo drones. They were programmed, not entirely unlike law enforcement robots such as the K-9000 Cyberdogs and the K-9000 Cyberdog gun, so they were probably incapable of going outside of that region. We do know that the Appalachian region is the only part in the wasteland to date that is home of the Bravos, also known as Scorch Beasts. Since we don't really know a whole awful lot about what happens between Fallout 76 and the other Fallout titles, any number of things could have caused them to go offline. Or they could just be exclusive to that region, and after so long, they just stopped functioning. So this one, I'm not going to go one way or the other because we really don't know enough. But it does make more sense than not. Number 3. Fan theory. The mysterious stranger's identity. Persisting throughout the entire series, the mysterious stranger is a bit of an enigma. He appears randomly to aid you in combat once you take the associated perk, and then vanishes until the next time he shows up to help you. We don't get much outside of that, or do we? A few popular theories include him actually being many people, given the time frame or the idea that he could be a synth. The most intriguing, however, would be him being exposed to some sort of relic, in the same way that Lorenzo Cabot was, rendering him ageless. This supports Nick Valentine's assertion that he's psychotic, as exposure to such an artifact obviously does that to people. Now, I'm going to offer another suggestion, mainly because the mysterious stranger appears all over the country. Not just one part of the wasteland or the other, literally all over. And it's possible that the mysterious strangers were all PIs, private detectives who were part of some organization similar to how the Mistresses of Mystery in Fallout 76 are. Much like the Mistresses, they probably followed someone similar to the Silver Shroud, dishing out wasteland justice. They more likely formed a coalition similar to the Regulators, and the Regulators may have actually been inspired by the mysterious stranger at some point, and thus they go all over the country, spreading out, finding others to recruit, and continuing the cycle. Someone who they decide is worthy of their assistance, they keep an eye on. And there's always someone watching them from afar, ready to come in and help, probably through use of stealth boys or some other form of tech. So, there's any number of possibilities. Number 2. Makes no sense. No progress after 200 years? Sure, some factions are generally better off than others. You have the Brotherhood, the Institute, and so on. But the general state of living for most people after 200 years makes absolutely no sense. There's no real industry to speak of. People are essentially tribal, and often choosing living life in a hut made from scrap metal. The closest the game comes to something resembling realism is the NCR, which is not entirely true. There's beyond the NCR. There's Vault City and other places. The idea that they, or one of the other advanced factions, wouldn't have rapidly expanded. Okay, it's not silly at all. Shoddycast, again, did a video explaining part of this. Some parts of the world slowly would develop. They want to get to a reasonable state of self-sufficiency and not overabundance. Again, people are learning from the mistakes of the past to some capacity. There are ones like the Brotherhood, the Institute, the Enclave, who are wanting to boom industry again. But for the most part, people are wary of it. They know that greed is something that spawned the Great War. And so a lot of people have just grown to not go too far into it. So it actually does make sense, but it's a lot more complicated than what it seems at first. It's a whole civics thing. And I'm sure there are examples through history of similar things. And finally, number 1. Fan theory. The rest of the world is worse off than the West. We don't hear much concerning the fate of the rest of the world, with a lot of Fallout setting and charm revolving solidly around the 1950s vibe that it's known for. However, we do have some indications that the grass isn't any greener on the other sides of the world. One primary indication is the fact that several wasteland inhabitants actually migrated over to the States after the Great War. Alistair Tenpenny, for example, a former Englishman you can meet in Fallout 3, did just that. And if people are willing to move into the bombed-out shell of the U.S., that alone provides enough evidence to make this theory more than credible. It is possible to some degree, and again, shoddycasted a whole thing talking about why this may or may not be. And yeah, there are others. There's the ghoul from Fallout 3's it's similar to Far Harbor. I'm having trouble remembering right now. It's getting late. But yeah, there are a number of people. Kate, who's clearly Scottish. The old ghoul bloke from Fallout 3. From Point Lookout. There's just a number of people who have accents. Now mind, the Chinese ones we know came during the Great War. Their ships, submarines and whatnot. There's the Finnish ghouls in Fallout 4. But honestly, it is hard to say. We don't really know much about the rest of the world. Part of that is because some of the other nations, such as Japan and Australia, are not big fans of participating with this whole thing. Japan has a big thing against visions of nuclear anything. So there's a lot of stuff that just won't work. So this theory could be plausible. We do know that the Great War affected a lot. And we won't go into that. Maybe we won't. But anyway, this one could be plausible. It's hard to say. Let's look at real quick. We're at the hour and 7-minute mark roughly right now. 15 Fallout series logic means that prove the games make no sense. Okay, let's take a look at this. Is this the first official one? Drowning. Drinks water to get health. Yeah, that is totally okay. That wouldn't be. Oh no. Let me go back. Okay. Number 15, The Blue Screen of Death. Fallout 3, Game of the Year, Steam copy. Chapter 3, pictures taken just before a game crash. Oh boy, files done gone goof. Okay, yeah, that is a thing sometimes. 14, it was one drink. You did it. You restored the flow of clean water to the entire capital wasteland. Not a problem. Boy, all that saving the world business made me awful thirsty. Take. What's everyone looking at? God, ain't that true? You can't do jack in Fallout. Boom goes the mini nuke. Come on, let's go. Hold up, gotta search this guy for loot. Loot. You blew this guy into chunks with a nuclear bomb rocket launcher. There's nothing left. You're searching a random chunk of flesh. Do you not see that? Do you not see that you're... What is this? There's a Fallout parody series on YouTube. Look it up. It is hilarious. It pokes fun at this so hard. Number 12, SpongeBob. A settlement needs your help. Oh God. Enclave. Brotherhood of... Yeah. NC... Legion. Okay. Mr. House. Yeah. Yes. God, I hate Yes Man. I hate Yes Man with a passion. I really do. He is so annoying. There is no getting rid of him. There is literally no getting rid of him. I reduced Yes Man to a puddle of goo, and he still came back. The Minutemen. The Institute. And they're like, yeah, that's pretty funny. Me taking my 6th one at a child's birthday party. 6th what? Everyone, okay, that one I don't really get. I don't, yeah. This is a problem in all these games. Crippled, wondering, yeah, kinda. Hell hath no fury like mine. This is Scorpion's territory. Better get your radiator out of here before we mess you up. What did you say? Listen here, you little... I've killed more things in this wasteland than your whole measly gang combined. I've killed more death claws alone than you'll probably ever see. I even engulfed an entire town in the flame of atomic fire. I am idolized by those who I called friend. I am feared by those that are my enemy. So listen here, you limp-dick son of a Gomorrah. I shouldn't be afraid of you, no. You should be afraid of me, for I am the Messiah, the Lord of Death, and I can and will kill you and your gang, and this entire town if I feel like it. Oh, for the love of God, don't! I'm sorry, don't kill us! Are you gonna give me that discount? Yeah, whatever you want. Oh, God. That is a perfect example of how the strength check for speech goes sometimes. That is hilarious. Hey, 50 Shades of... Oh, Gary. God, I hate 50 Shades. I hate stupid Twilight. 50 Shades of Grey is just... Ugh. 7. All that. I'm gonna use your balls as a hacky sack. Wait. So if I wanted to shoot you in the head, taking into account wind velocity and the distance between us, multiplied by my relative skill with small guns, divided by the size of your head and your rate of speed, I'd have a 45% chance to hit. Now if I want to shoot you in the torso, oh come on man, I wasn't kidding, I've got a game at 3:30. Wasteland life. Free VATS. Actually, I suspect that is how VATS actually works. I don't think it actually automatically assists you with targeting, it just gives you the percentage of likelihood based on your relative distance through the built-in information on various specs of firearms in the system. And that is classic. Number 6. Run, Forrest, run! When you run into a room, but then hear a tripwire snag and grenades fall. Oh god, that has got to be the most relatable thing I have seen so far. Jesus. Even with Maximum Snake and other crap, this still somehow manages to happen to me, mainly because of my stupid companions. Number 5. Stimpit will fix that right up. Not feeling so hot. Let's see how my health is. Oh no. Yeah, that... Does anyone really play Caravan? Playing Caravan? I don't. Playing Caravan! I don't know what the heck I'm doing! Pretty much. I downloaded a game, an app really, that basically is Caravan on mobile, and I still can't figure it out. I have tried, I just can't figure it out. Me eating gas station sushi. Note added. See you in hell. Okay. I mean, I suppose this makes sense based on a lot of pre-warred packaged goods, including moldy food and whatnot. Still, this is... Okay. Caesar's doggy? Such cruelty, much savory, wow, extreme, too brutal. Oh. Yeah, just it's not actually known as Coyote, but yeah, trust me. Read the comments. We're showing a bunch of prequel battles. What about the droid attack on the Wookiees? A bag of droids have holed up near Kashyyyk. They could use your help. Oh God! This is why I hate Preston Garvey. This is why I hate the Minutemen. Oh God. Oh, okay. We're at about an hour 15 right now. Yeah, we're not going to do anything else with that right now. I actually had to start recording again because it, for whatever reason, stopped. This was funny. I'm so glad we did this. This was awesome. Thanks for tuning in to the Moonshadow Mystery Channel, everyone. For Moonshadow discusses Fallout. Um, I'm glad I decided to do this. It's different than what we normally do. If you liked today's video, show your love by high-fiving that like button down below, and if you didn't like it, apple buck that dislike button. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, your feelings, and what you think about this. And thoughts and feelings before I meant pertaining to the stuff we covered as we read through all this. These memes that are funny, I almost wish there were more. As always, feel free to leave your comments, suggestions, questions, and requests in the comment section down below. Yeah, if you're new to the channel, not sure what you think of us just yet, and want to see what else we have to offer, click my name above the video description. If you think you're ready to take the dive and join our Rainbow White Hive, tap that subscriber button. And don't forget to ring-a-ding-ding that notification bell icon. Check the video description down below for other ways you can be involved with us here on the channel. Hopefully I will sometime soon be able to recover my assets so I can get my production quality back up to snuff. In the meantime, though, all that information will always be in the video description. So feel free to check out our DeviantArt account, Twitter, the official Facebook group page, the Rainbow White Hive, and more. That's all the time we have for today. Have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and a great weekend ahead, depending on when you get around to seeing today's video. As always, remember, don't go changing for anyone but yourselves. We'll have to see you right back here. Same Moonshadow time, same mystery channel. When we get out of the hay and into the fray with our next video. Take care. We hope to see you right back here next time. Bye-bye now.